Shabbat Shalom, Chaverim. Hi, friends. Welcome. Our Kabbalat Shabbat band is back. Yay! A little spirit to lift us a little bit more. Our youngest member is over here on the guitar in the front. You can't all see him. He's 2 years old, and he's taking the guitar solos tonight. Yep, for sure. Malachi, you should be with the band. Come be on this side with the band.
Yes, indeed. We're going to begin with page 10, Yedid Nefesh, and I'll do a more formal welcome as people are walking in. Again, page 10, Yedid Nefesh. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So before we officially begin, just a few logistical announcements. The first is, hopefully everyone's grabbed a prayer book on their way in. If you need a prayer book or really anything, our usher tonight is Richard Klein, a member of our Board of Trustees. Large print prayer books are available as you walk in as well. So are hearing assisted devices, which are in the office right on the right. Our bathrooms are outside to the right, though if you need all gender or handicap accessible bathrooms, they're through the office toward the back. And if you need an emergency exit for some reason tonight, of course, there's the exit you came in, but notice there's an exit right here and an exit through those doors to the back as well. Finally, it's our hope that people will sing, that they'll hum, that they'll clap along. I know we have a number of fourth grade families here. We've got a number of their extended family with them. Maybe it's your first time with us, and maybe the melodies are new for you, or if you're in fourth grade, you haven't been to many Friday night services. So we hope that if you see someone who's lost, you'll point them where they are on the page, and that you'll try your best to participate to the best of your ability. We're going to move through our service tonight, and rather than a formal sermon where a sermon would normally go, in case you're wondering kind of why am I not speaking, we're actually going to save it till the end. We're going to dismiss the fourth grade after kind of the prayer part of service's end, and then we'll have actually, rather than a sermon, a discussion with a member of our congregation, with Michelle Kriegman, who herself not only is Jewish, but also is Native American. And this is Native American Heritage Month. And so a number of months ago, we decided that this Shabbat, she and I would reflect on kind of the intersection between the Jewish story and the Native American story as we head kind of toward the season of Thanksgiving. And all the more so, and I'm going to talk about this when we're together, with all the talk around colonialization and decolonialization and accusations of Israel around those things, it becomes all the more important to even understand what do those terms mean. And so we're going to get a chance to reflect together on that. And so we're going to continue. We're on page 24 as we join together with the words of Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bochem l'shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch. Clap your hands with us. Say B'chem l'shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh
HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
So tomorrow we're going to invite Liam Ashkenazi up to our bima, and he's going to read from the Torah for the first time as he becomes bar mitzvah. And so it's my pleasure to call him up with his family. Where is he? Right there. As they prepare to light our candles and to lead us in Kiddush. We're on page 2 and 3. Who's the first reader? You reading first?
You gonna hold it for me? Okay. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav
V'tzivanu lehadlik ner
shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher קידשנו במצוותיו ורצוונו ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצו הנחילנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש זכר לצייה מצרים כיוונו בחרצה ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
אמן. לחיים. יישר כוח. An early mazel tov.
We're going to move forward in our service now. We're on page 20 as we join together in the words of Lecha Dodi. Sing with us. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Shalom bizachor v'divurecha.
השפיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם בו תפארת ולתחילה. Let's hear you. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, מראש מקראתם לסוכה, זה מעשה במחשבות תחילה. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. nekabela. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5, hitoreri, hitoreri, hitoreri. כי באורי ומירורי, אורי אורי שתדברי, כי עוד אדוני יקדירה. Let's hear you. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. nekabela. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. We rise if you are able. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. טוב אמוני עם המעשה גולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. Together lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei pnei Shabbat nekabela. lecha lecha dodi, likrat likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. We remain standing. We're on page 28.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני
Baruch Adonai,
המבורך
Hamevorach,
לעולם
Leolam,
ועד.
stand together as we invite fourth grade up to help lead us in this next prayer, a creative rendition of the Mari Varavim prayer. So if you're in fourth grade, come on up.
Let's have our fourth graders. Come on up. You guys are going to stand up here like we practiced the other day. Come on up. Let's everybody come and stand up on this.
I was promised hand motions.
Yes, we're going to teach the hand motions. Are you guys ready to teach the hand motions? They're not hard.
No.
Okay? So you ready? All of you? The first part is what we do when we sing Roll Into Dark. So show everyone what we do for Roll Into Dark. Right? Come on, you can do it. You got
Focus
it.
thing.
Like this, roll into dark, right? And then when we get to, we go roll like this. And when we get to dark, put our hands like this, like we're sleeping, right? And then we roll back into, right? And then we say, night becomes day, day turns to night. Okay, you guys got it? And then when we do the Hebrew part, we just kind of like, little shake our hands back and forth. Are you guys ready?
And before we begin, we actually are recording our service on YouTube, so we've got this in posterity. So you can put the phones away, put them in your pocket. It's Shabbos, and so we shouldn't have them out.
1, 2, sing. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Keep rolling, roll, roll into dark. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Bodayom valayla, golelor mipnei choshech, golelor mipnei choshech, mechoshech mipnei or. Sing with us. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night.
Right there. A reading on the top of page 33. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Yishar kochechem, fourth graders.
We're on page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים.
אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
In a moment, we're going to turn to page 40. And this is our prayer of freedom. But it's interesting that although the word freedom in Hebrew is usually chofshi, right? You can think about in the in Hatikva, lihiotam chofshi, to be a free people, be'artzenu, in our land. That word doesn't actually appear in this blessing. Instead, the word for freedom is geulah, which is much closer to redemption. The idea is that when we're free from Egypt, it's not that we're freed from Egypt just to be free, to do whatever we want. We're freed from the narrowness of slavery. We're freed from oppression. But ultimately, we find ourselves bound in other ways, bound to a God, bound to law, bound to people. In a way, Judaism does celebrate freedom, but more than that, it celebrates redemption. It celebrates moving from a challenging place to another place, one that isn't completely free, but rather freedom with bounds that allow us to really feel the world deeper. Think about a time, and this is a challenge for all of us, when actually having some rules, having some obligations, does in a way make you feel more free. We're on page 40. Let's hear you.
וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוכת אדוני קהל ישראל.
On page 42, and I'll invite us to also turn our eyes to the screen. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ועמידנו שומרנו
One day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. Shiva
ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Yismechu, bottom of page 44.
ישמחו
V'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu, v'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei Shivi Shabbat, kulam v'yitzanu mitzvecha. Let's hear you. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, oneg Shabbat. רצית בו וקידשתו שבת, אותו קראת שבת. Yismechu, sing with us. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, oneg Shabbat. Clap your hands. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat, We rise together. We're on page 46. And after this opening meditation, we're going to move in silence through page 62, and you can be seated when you're finished.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufia gitehilatecha.
So, allowing these last moments of quiet to be a little bit like a seal on this beginning of Shabbat, to find that space in your heart that you can open maybe just a little wider, bringing yourself just a little closer to wholeness. I invite you to pray this prayer of peace with me on page 60. Shalom Rav. Let's get abundant peace.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tazim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tazim leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amecha tazim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amecha tazim leolam. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
As we've been doing each week, we join together in a special prayer for the state of Israel. This prayer was penned by Hannah Ellenson, who's a classmate, actually, of our student rabbi, James Fader, and he brought it the Friday night after the attack on Israel. And it's been what we've been doing throughout because it expresses many of the emotions and feelings and covers the full gamut of where a lot of us are. And so I'm going to invite us to rise. And before I read the prayer, as we do each week, I'm going to read a few names of those who are currently being held captive. Yafa Adler, 85. Raz Asher, age 5. Gafir Bibas, age 9 months. Narit Cooper, age 80. Karina Elid Davidov, age 30. Hirsch Goldberg Pollen, age 23. Tamir Gutman, age 27. Yael Haran, age 3. Dietza Hyman, age 84. Elad Katsir, age 47. Avinu Shabbat Shemayim, Shechina Makor Chayinu, Sor Yisrael V'Goalo. We beg you that you bless the state of Israel and all of Israel's inhabitants. Makor Chaim, source of life, bless and strengthen those who defend the land and ensure their safety and speedy return. Protect them and guide them. Kadosh Baruch Hu, Holy One of blessing, show Israel's leaders your paths so they may act with wisdom, courage, and dedication, and that they may be unwavering in their pursuit of peace. Strengthen their hearts, but keep their hearts from hardening. Matir Asurim, freer of captives, return all those who are kidnapped to their home in peace, without the spilling of more innocent blood, without any souls being tarnished by horrific acts. Baal HaRachamim, master of compassion, Help us hold humanity and the heartache of the Jewish people, all residents of the state of Israel, while holding the humanity and dignity of all peoples. May we be made in your image. Remind us of your ways. Spread over us a shelter of peace and fulfill the vision of your prophets. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they ever know war again. Please be seated.
Each time we gather in prayer, we have this opportunity for lots of prayers, but this one specifically. We offer a Misha Berach, which can be found on page 253. And I'll ask you to hold those names in your hearts and souls until I look around, and then you can add those names out loud that you're praying for. And of course, we'll see a list that's also on our screen. Misha Berach avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. Join me. Mishe Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
And so we're going to move now into the concluding section of our service. And after these final few prayers, we're going to dismiss the fourth grade and their families to dinner and invite everyone else to stay here. And our words will actually be shared after services, after the prayers of services officially end, so that fourth grade can get to their dinner. And so we rise together, page 282.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishvechot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. Va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu Ushemo, 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 Echad.
Please be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who we have loved and who we have lost. As I call the name of your loved ones, I'll invite you to rise and remain standing in honor of their memory. This Shabbat, we recall the following individuals: Leah Abramovich, Samuel Abramovich, June Anderson O'Reilly, Evelyn Asher, Milton Beck, Herbert Bernberg, Janet Campius, George Cohen, Carmela D'Agostino, Benjamin Dubrow, Mayor Dunn, Morris Ellis, Leon Feather, Samuel Finkelstein, Harold Fixell, Mark Genser, Rosalind Gladstone, Charles Glantz, Harriet Glassman, Della Mae Goldsmith, Samuel Goodman, Mark Grayson, Bertha Green, Albert Coppell, Maurice Krieger, Maxine Lazarus, Janet Leff, Hannah Leisure, Melvin Mandel, Claire Nolan, Norton Knack, Paul O'Reilly, Leonard Phillips, David Pines, Jonathan Plout, Olga Podolowski, Podolskaya, Sarah Price, Samuel Prince, Herman Radish, Frederick Sampson, David Sarlin, Jerome Shapiro, Yetta Shakin, Miriam Shankman, William Sherman, Eska Slansky, Misha Slatkin, Mary Spitzer, Esther Watton, Jack Weinstock, Jack Wildman, and Fanny Irene Zimmon. And those who were in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning: Alan Lukes, father of Jonathan Lukes, Alan Oliner, father of Carolyn Oliner, Janet Campius, mother of Joe Campius, and Chaim Zohar, father of Nitzan Aviram. I'll invite us to add to that list any names for people for whom we're thinking that might not have been on this list, or who you are within your 1 year period of mourning for. We turn to page 294 and we rise together. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad yivrach v'yateh v'yamlech malchuteh, v'chayei echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei l'kol Beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei almaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitnomam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha baruch. Tushbechata v'nechamata, Damiram b'yamam v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. So before we move into our closing song, and then after our closing song, we'll dismiss the fourth grade and invite everyone else to stay here for a short discussion between Michelle and I, which I'll introduce in a second. Just a few announcements. The first is Saturday morning services are at 10 a.m. We've got Torah study at 8:30, and do we have chanting? No,
but
chanting?
we have Wake Up Shabbat at 10:30.
Wake Up Shabbat. So if you've got little
For
ones,
little ones.
that is happening at 10:30
New
tomorrow.
time, 10:30 a.m.
At 10 o'clock, we're going to invite Liam up to the bima as he becomes bar mitzvah. The next day, two important programs are happening. The first is kind of at the tail end of religious school, and then after that, we're having a camp fair. You should know it was right around, if you're in fourth grade, your age, where I started going to Eisner Camp, and I was there for 13 summers. Jewish summer camp is an incredibly powerful experience. If you don't yet have a camp for yourself, or you're not happy at the camp you're at, come to the camp fair. We would love for you to learn more about it. And then from 12 to 3 o'clock on Walnut Street, you'll see a sign actually out there if you want more information for it. There's a rally for those who are being held captive right now in Gaza, all 240 something. Israelis and other nationals who got taken on the 7th of October. And so we're going to come together as a full Montclair area community to pray for them, to rally for them, and to ask that we bring them home. And that's Sunday from 12 to 3. I think the actual formal kind of vigil program starts around 12:30, and it's pretty short. It's tight, so you should come by 12:30 if you can. And then on Monday, if you feel like you don't really know that much about the conflict, you don't know much about Israel's history, I'm going to be doing a lecture at the congregation, a talk at 7:30 here. By the way, I put this out to the congregation and I was like, okay, you know what? 15 people who feel like they need a refresher are going to show up. I have 125 people who've registered already and the list is growing. So I'm going to bring my A game for this lecture. And if you feel like you need to know more about the conflict, come and I'll take us from really the birth of Zionism all the way up till the present day, and talk about the major things that led us to be at this exact moment.
Yes, drink a cup of coffee before you come.
Yes. Or, practice listening to your Audible on 1.5 speed. That's how I'll be able to get everything.
That's true.
So we've got lots of other things going on over the course of the next few weeks. We've got a film festival, for example, in 2 weeks here, kicking off on Friday night. Just check your email, check the website. There's lots of wonderful things going on. So we're going to conclude formally at our service with page 321, Adon Olam, and then we'll invite the 4th grade to go, and then we'll continue on with some learning and some words.
Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra lenasa v'chatzo kol azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra
Adon Olam asher
asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra lenasa v'chatzo kol v'chatzo kol azay melech shemo nikra ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא יהיה לתפארה
Let's hear you, Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher
אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לנשא וחצו הכל עשה ילך שמו נקרא ולא אחד ואין שני להמשיאו להחמירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולהעוז מעם
Let's hear you, Adon Olam
אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לנשא וחפצו הכל עשה ילך שמו נקרא והוא לי וחי גואלי וצורם לי לעת צרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מן הכוסי ביום מרע
Let's hear you, Adon Olam
אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא נשא וחפצו עשה מלך שמו נקרא בידו
אפיד רוחי
ואת אישה יאירה ועם רוחי גליעתי אדוני ולא ירא
Let's hear you, Adon Olam
אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לנשא וחפצו עשה מלך שמו
Shabbat shalom. Don't go anywhere if you're not in 4th grade.
Yes, so 4th
Thank
grade,
you,
we're going to
band.
invite you to come eat out there, but make sure to drop your books off on the way out. For everyone else, we're going to, you can move up a little bit closer if you want. We're going to have about a 15, 20-minute conversation.
you are obviously a sister.
Really good to see you too. All right. Check, 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 check. Check. All right. Where did Michelle go? Here she is. All right, Michelle, come on up. I'll introduce you. All right. So earlier this summer, Michelle and I got to talking, and she's done a lot of research and has a personal connection to the question of both adoption and Native American culture and what it means to intersect. And so we have this, we had a great title for tonight. Tonight was about the 2% meet the 2%, right? American Jews are 2% of the American population. Native Americans are 2% of the population. And this being Indigenous Peoples Month, and we're heading toward Thanksgiving, we thought this was kind of, when we planned this over the summer, we thought this was the appropriate week to really kind of delve into the intersection between the two. And in a way, when you think about Israel right now, and you hear college campuses and you hear criticisms of Israel, the question of what does colonialism mean, Israel as a colonialist power, the movement of decolonialism actually is, I would say, one of the things leveled the most against Israel. And so in a way, to talk about what does being indigenous really mean, and what does colonialism really mean, it kind of is one of the kind of key things for the moment when you are kind of defending yourself in those very, very, very extreme liberal spaces that many of our college students are finding themselves in right now.
Yeah.
But we'll get there in time. I want to start by giving you just a chance to tell a little bit about yourself and your connection to this issue.
Okay. And I have to say, this has been a great year for me. My first year at Nair. Closer? Is this
Yeah.
better? This is my first year as a member of Nair Tamid, and so I've been binge reading for the past 20 months, everything and anything nonfiction and fiction that's modern, that's related to Native Americans. I've been happily using my space with Ronnie to work on beadwork. I'm not good at it, but I appreciate it. I've had wonderful rambling conversations with Cantor. And we came up with these wonderful Native American versus Jewish jokes, which I'm not sharing tonight. My list of famous Jewish Native mixes, and I'm not sharing that tonight. But we also had I also had some hard conversations. I was at an adoption conference. It's a biennial one held jointly with St. John's University and Montclair State University, where someone was talking about Alcatraz and raising the Palestinian flag and the neo-colonialism of the Zionists. And there I was. But I was there speaking about the Indian Child Welfare Act, yet I'm also a Jew. Similar conversation at a Zoom conference co-hosted by the University of Winnipeg and Brown University. And I had to then really take a crash course in what is this settler colonialism, what is meant by neocolonialism. And I guess we're going to have more of that conversation now.
And so you, just so everybody understands, you are Native American,
Yes.
and you were telling me there are like, they count by the nature of strands, right? By number of people in your family who
Blood
are Native
quantum
American.
is a term. So
And so what does that mean?
okay, and so in case I didn't make it clear, I'm adopted. I always knew my birth mother was Jewish, but I wasn't raised Jewish. I was raised in an adoptive interfaith family. So like my heart still stops when I hear a rabbi introduce me as Jewish. And I have to say, if he said it, it must be true. you know, but I feel that way when I hear Native American because I knew yet less. My adoptive parents were lied to, and they were told nothing was known about my birth father, which is so many degrees away from the truth that it's stunning today. But when I went back as an adult to get my non-identifying information, that launched me on a 3-year search to eventually find him, they said our policy has changed, but prior to the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, we erased Native, they called it American Indian. We erased American Indian heritage, but in fact, we do know through your birth mother that your birth father was Native American. When I found him, Bill Ray, he's since deceased, he had gone into the field of adoption, and he was the director of fiscal services for New York City's special needs adoption and foster care. And as I told my adoptive dad after I met my birth father, so basically he writes checks to adoptive dads all day. But it was really painful because he had wanted to raise me. He had the wherewithal to raise me. But the same month that I was placed for adoption, that he requested that he and his then fiance, now widow, keep me, my adoption agency, like I believe most in the United States, received a letter sent jointly, and I have it on my Facebook page. I have a microfiche of it, rather. Sent out by the Bureau of Indian Affairs with the Child Welfare League, encouraging them to place Native American children with Caucasian families, and that's a direct quote. And I think that is why he was rejected from being allowed to raise his own child. And that wouldn't happen today. The adoption agency has changed very much today. But because of that kind of painful thing, I get how academics would call this a tool of war or neocolonialism, because what happened to me happened at an enormous scale on reservations across the United States and Canada and Australia, where, at least in the United States, I can't speak for Australia and Canada's figures, depending on the reservation, between 24% and 33% of children were taken away for adoption. 90% were placed with Caucasian families, as I was. I was not from a reservation, though. And basically, that was a really good way to erase someone's culture. It meets the UN definition of cultural genocide. If you take a third of a generation, for enough generations, you wipe out that culture. And so most Native American languages are extinct in the United States. There are a few that survive, and that is something that I think they have a lesson for us as diaspora Jews.
Yeah,
that we'll get into later.
So I actually want to get into, let's start with the relationship to land, right? So Native Americans in the United States are in a position very different than the Jewish community has ever been in, right? For the most part, although there have always been pockets of Jews living in Israel, and I'm going to be drawing the connection, of course, our indigeneity, if that's a word.
Indigeneity is trending.
It is?
Trending.
Is Israel, right? And so for the most part, although there were always little groups living in Israel since the destruction of the temple in 70 CE, notably, for example, in, 16th century Svat in northern Israel with the mystics and things like that. For the most part, the majority of the Jewish world lived in the diaspora and yearned to return. On the other hand, now we're living in an era where almost half of the Jewish community in the world lives in Israel itself. And so there isn't that same kind of yearning. And so the Native American community is both living in the United States, so not so far away, right? And some are even living on native land, but they may not feel full sovereignty over that native land. They also may not, they may have pieces of that land they want to go back to and they can't. So I'm wondering if you can talk about, like, what does diaspora look like for Native Americans? What does yearning for land look like for Native Americans?
Okay. So for my paternal grandmother,
Get the mic closer.
I'm an amateur. For my paternal grandmother, she came from Western New York at the St. Regis Reservation. And she and her family, and I don't have all the details of when and chronology, but they wound up in what's now called Burham Hill in Brooklyn. At the time, it was North Gowanus, and it was known as a Mohawk kind of enclave. And they wound up there to go because of jobs in the construction industry. And if you've seen the iconic poster, with the Native Americans sitting having lunch on a rebar way above the city, that was sort of the Mohawk story. My paternal grandfather was also came to Brooklyn, happened somehow to get to that neighborhood. I don't know how, but he's originally from Arkansas. And by taking an ancestry DNA test, I've been able to get in touch with relatives in Arkansas and Tennessee and North Texas and places like that, and get photos and get more of the story. But he decided to leave the South. He was not on a reservation. I cannot determine if he belonged to the Eastern Band of Cherokee. There are 3 bands, 2 in Oklahoma, in what are called the 14 counties, which is sort of Cherokee areas within Oklahoma, which are reservations. And then there's the Eastern Band, which is about 14,000 members in the Carolinas. I have some relatives that live there, but for family reasons, he decided to make his fortune in New York City. And in fact, most enrolled Native Americans do not live on reservations today. Most do live in cities or suburbs. Some do live on reservations, which are extremely poor. We hear about the casinos, like in Connecticut. There are a few that are incredibly rich, but there are many with casinos that still are so isolated that they're still not, living that dream. But those reservations are not ancestral lands. So the 14 counties in Oklahoma have no history for Cherokee before 1840. Their ancestral lands were really parts of Arkansas, southern Missouri, Georgia, and the Carolinas.
And tell me a little bit about ancestral lands. So for Jews, for example, like our connection to Israel is multifaceted. It's the place where our history happened. It's the place that we've yearned to return to in prayer for 2,000 years. It's also, honestly, I mean, if anyone's been to Israel before, I had a professor once say that that you can access God anywhere, but you have all the bars on your cell phone when you're trying to call God in Jerusalem, or it's a local call in Jerusalem. And so that's, there's lots of reasons why Israel matters to the Jewish people. I'm curious, when you hear ancestral lands, what does that mean to a Native American?
Okay, so that would be where your ancestors lived for several thousand years, either before first European contact, if you're in the Northeast, or before the removals in the 19th century. It's the topography that matches your stories and your folklore. Where you get moved to on the reservation, where you live in tract housing, doesn't match that. I hope I'm giving enough. It's, if you dig in the ground in parts of Georgia, you will find Cherokee artifacts. Just like if you dig in the ground in Israel, you will find Hebrew and Aramaic artifacts. If you dig in the ground in Oklahoma, you won't.
Interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about the relationship of Native Americans to the American story. I mean, it is interesting, and I'm wondering if you can talk to this a little bit. And this is a very hard question I'm about to ask. But it seems that in America, the majority of Americans don't speak about Native American reclaiming and return to land in the way that they speak, let's say, about decolonialism and Israel, and the idea that, like if they consider Israel a colonialist power, which it is not, because a colonialist power cannot be a power that is indigenous to the land from which it is in. But when you hear that leveled, the idea is like, give the land back, right? We don't hear that with Native Americans. Why do you think it is that the same people who are leveling the criticisms against Israel are not leveling those criticisms on behalf of Native Americans to America right now?
I'll disagree, but only a little bit.
Okay.
There actually are people that there is a hashtag land back movement. And a friend of mine, Molly Obamsawin, is up in northern Maine trying to get some land given back to Wabanaki tribes, the 4 Wabanaki tribes. There are people arguing for turning federal parkland over to whichever tribes were indigenous there. And there's where it starts to begin to sound a lot like Palestine/Israel. So I picked a spot that we go to for vacation north of Lake George. And I thought, oh, this could be Iroquois territory. I wonder if it's Mohawk, like maybe these are where my peeps used to be. And it got real complicated real quickly because there were 3 different tribes, depending on the period of history, that lived there. And it began to feel like, wow, Shroon Lake is just like Gaza. I mean, how do you say it's only this indigenous people, but not that indigenous people? So there are Native Americans that are calling for that. But I think they both suffer and are blessed with a little bit more obscurity than Jews. So there's not that laser focus on projecting whatever we want to project onto Native Americans the way people might project stuff onto Palestinians and Israelis.
Yeah, I mean, the projection is an interesting thing. I mean, you may not know how anti-Semitism works, you as in the congregation, but really what anti-Semitism is it's pick the thing that people are the most afraid of or that they hate the most in the era in which they live and project it onto the Jews. So when people hate communism the most, Jews are communists. When people are in communist Russia and they hate capitalism the most, Jews are capitalists. For the very far left in America right now, the thing that people hate the most is communism and oppressors and all of that. And so that makes sense why the narrative would end up putting Jews in there. You pick the thing the community hates the most, and then you kind of superimpose Judaism on top of that, which is why the narratives, although should be very complex when it comes to Israel, are actually very clean to our detriment when you hear people tell the stories.
It's cowboys and Indians.
Yeah.
If you want to keep it simple, you can project, Custer or Andrew Jackson, who, created the Trail of Tears, where thousands of Native Americans died marching from Georgia up to Oklahoma. And you can say, well, that's just the same. It's very different in terms of deaths. We didn't have this is where I want to talk about settler colonialism, I guess, and the difference between settler colonialism and colonialism. Colonialism, we all learned about in school and social studies. It's, England comes and they want to take over India and destroy the weaving looms, but pretty much everyone in India stays in India. When England goes to Canada, North America, and Australia, they decide, hey, we can move this civilization out and we can send people to make these teeming shores. And I'm going to say it. The deliberate plan was genocide. The deliberate plan in Anglo-America was genocide. It was not the case with the Spanish, for example, in Mexico and Latin and other parts of Latin America, but the idea really was from very early on, from the 1600s on, where scalps could bring in money. There, you would get bounty for a child's scalp, which would cause death, a woman's scalp or a man's scalp, and that would help clear places so that now European settlers could go in, and that is not what happened in Israel. But it's very easy to say, oh, white people from Europe went to Israel and they moved out the brown people. That's settler colonialism, but the details matter. The details really
and
matter.
50% of Israel's population are actually Jews from the Arab world who themselves were refugees from places like Iraq and Iran and Morocco who ended up in Israel. I'm wondering actually if you can speak, because when we were prepping for today, you talked about how, there is a model in Native American history of two peoples who claim indigenuity. What was the word?
Indigeneity.
And still figure out a way to kind of like share and be okay with that. And I'm curious, you were talking to me about the fact that, which we may not realize, there was a tremendous amount of warring between the tribes. It wasn't just there was Native Americans and there were English. there was a lot of discord going on back at the time. And I'm curious if you can reflect a little bit on that and like what lessons we might learn just in general from the way that they functioned.
Okay, so yeah, part of my visit to this place, Shroom Lake, was discovering that 3 warring tribes were killing each other and scalping each other for that piece of land. And basically parts of Canada and Western New York were a little bit like Swiss cheese, which is the same way I've heard Israel described, where you have Arab villages in Israel and you have Jewish settlements in the West Bank. And New York was very much like that before the Europeans got there. And you may have heard of the name Hiawatha. There's Longfellow's poem, which has nothing to do with the historical Hiawatha. He actually based his poem on a different Indian near the Great Lakes, not New York State, but he liked the name Hiawatha better and he took poetic license. The real Hiawatha, and I thought about him on October 7th, he was kind of, if you want to think of it, and I'm going to not even try to say the name of his partner, but there was sort of a Moses-like leader and visionary who had a speech impediment, and he needed someone like Aaron to speak for him, and this was Hiawatha. And this very spiritual visionary person imagined going to tribes and getting them to really decide that too much blood has been shed, and they go tribe by tribe by tribe. And Hiawatha was the right person because his 3 daughters and his wife had been taken hostage and then murdered. And he was beside himself. And he was done. He was ready to try for peace. And I think it's Gawana his day, but I don't want to embarrass myself by saying the visionary's name incorrectly. I don't know Mohawk. They first went to the Mohawk tribe, and they were able to convince them to attempt talking to the Onondaga, and they won over the Onondaga, and then the Oneida, and then the Cayuga, and this, they think, based on calendar facts like eclipses, that it happened in about, I forget, it's like late 13th century. And they believed that there had been hundreds of years of this kind of Swiss cheese settlement and warfare leading up to that. And then a few centuries later, a 6th group, the Tuscarora, also joined, and I left out the Seneca. So those 6 tribes became what we call the 6 Nations, or the Iroquois 6 Nations, or the Iroquois Confederacy. And they came up with their great document of peace that's still read at gatherings. There are some historians that say that that was part of the inspiration for the US Constitution, because there was federalism as part of it, and the idea of separate states or tribes still coming together for councils or congresses for decision making for the whole group. But the idea was, it took Hiawatha losing his wife and daughters as hostages and then finding out they had been murdered. And I was thinking, wow, yeah, they finally got there. I would love for Israelis and Palestinians to get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I fear that it's going to be a bumpy road, a very bumpy road over the next little bit. So I want to thank you very much for the really thoughtful conversation. And I want to just give you one final word. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
One final word first.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll keep it short.
Of course.
One thing, oh, sorry. One wonderful thing that I have learned as an adoptee, reaching out to some Native Americans, sometimes it can be really tricky because money's involved and government stipends, and I'm not applying to be enrolled, but there are other people that are wonderful. And one thing that Native Americans communities do is they come together in powwows, which are usually cross-tribal. They're not a local one-tribe thing. And they periodically organize welcome back powwows for adoptees who were adopted away from the culture. And I was talking with a friend, and he said, well, nowadays there's a lot of half Jews that are turning up or finding out they're half Jewish because of donor conception. For many decades, the church disapproved of AR, artificial reproduction. And so there were medical students and Boston area Hillel volunteers that were male gamete donors. And there are a lot of people that are discovering with DNA testing that they're half Jewish, and some convert. And we're lucky that they do. But I was thinking, wow, if we can have powwows welcoming back adoptees, why can't we have Shabbaton at a community level welcoming back our half Jews? And Native Americans say, and I love this, this is from Anton Troyer, who's a Ojibwa, and he's also half Austrian Jewish Holocaust survivor descent as well. And he said, why commit paper genocide? Why use blood quantum on the Native American side, or why use whatever squeamishness about donor conceived people on the Jewish side to basically create a paper genocide or a statistical genocide by cutting out people who may want to come back and learn more about their heritage. So that was my last part.
Well, thank you. And so, as you said, it's all about opening arms and opening hearts. And I love the fact that, you know, I don't think in my 5 years here we've ever really had a conversation where even realizing that like my eyes were opened even when you sent me the title, that we're exactly the same size, the Jewish community, as the Native American community. And now we can see the tremendous number of overlaps, but also the differences between. So thank you for bringing this conversation to our community.
And thank you for welcoming me to
Of
do that.
course, of course. So grab a cookie, meet one another, and Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Okay.